All right, now to that new polling that says voters have more faith in Democrats than the president and Republicans. Asked by Quinnipiac University, a poll on who do you trust more on the issues important to you. 49% say House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. 42% say President Trump. Among independent voters, trust in Pelosi is steady at 49, but trust in the president falls to 36. On the question of border security, voters trust Democrats in Congress more than President Trump, 50% to 41%. As for who is responsible for the government shutdown, 56% say Trump, and congressional Republicans, 34% blame the Democrats. And when asked whether a border wall with Mexico would significantly decrease violent crime, only 33% said yes. 64% said no. And Joe, any relation between polls like this and Mitch McConnell speaking out after not speaking out for quite some time in relation to Syria and disagreeing with the president?
I think so. I mean, I think Mitch McConnell yesterday, I thought Willie was pretty extraordinary that Mitch McConnell
out of nowhere.
and the Republicans were as aggressive as they were. And I think it came from two things. One, Donald Trump is just melting down. His poll numbers are... those poll numbers, Republicans have never seen
they can read.
a poll where Nancy Pelosi is far ahead of a Republican national leader, president especially. But also, they got to be hearing from their base.
Yep.
They got to be hearing from their contributors. They got to be hearing from a lot of traditional conservatives saying, wait a second, we're turning Syria over to Putin and all the generals are freaking out.
Not good.
And I'm just going to leave that hanging there. You want to jump in?
No, I didn't. I thought you were going for it. Sometimes there's a dramatic pause. I want to let you deliver.
And then he launches again and keeps going.
No, he also said, you know, his famous line is that there's no education in the second kick of a mule. He's asked yesterday about the possibility of another shutdown in 2 weeks. He goes, well, there's certainly no education in the third kick of the mule. Like, what are we doing talking about another shutdown? But what's interesting is there was a report a couple of days ago that the White House had presented President Trump, his senior advisors, with a packet of polling that said the shutdown worked for him, that it was a good thing.
That's unbelievable.
And I confirmed that with the White House. They said, we don't think that another shutdown's a good idea, but we do have numbers internally that show his numbers dropped a little, but not as much as being portrayed in the national polls. Nancy Pelosi's numbers went down. Those are in complete contrast to every bit of public polling we've seen, including what we just showed there. But they believe it, that wasn't such a bad thing for him. Those 35 days weren't so bad for the president.
Well, I just want to add one other thing that the Republicans on the Hill are also very concerned about, and it's what they don't know when it comes to Robert Mueller. The Stone indictment definitely continued to scare people, but this investigation, Republicans are starting to get very nervous being so tied to the president. It's not there yet, but they want to be able to break away and break fast.
Yep.
John Heilman.
Well, look, I think you're going to get what you're seeing from McConnell, I think, apart from everything else, is we are going to run into this deadline for the end of this period of this having the government funded, and you're going to have another conversation. It's unlikely that anything is going to come out of these negotiations. And so I think McConnell is already setting the predicate for resuming the conversation with Trump that he was having at the end of the shutdown, which was, dude, if you don't open the government, we're going to have 70, 75 people in the Senate side, and much of my conference is going to turn against you. That conversation is going to have to be renewed, and I think McConnell, apart from everything else, is laying the groundwork for that conversation to make sure that Trump does not try to do this again. He's going to have to be more assertive. That is McConnell towards Trump. I think he's starting to kind of let Trump know that that's where the conversation is going.
And by the way, when you start seeing polls that show higher numbers of Republicans want to see a Republican challenge Donald Trump in the primary, which there's some polls that are starting to show that, you know, we're not quite at 50% yet, but more and more Republicans are saying, yeah, I'd kind of like to see another Republican that I'd at least have a chance to look at. And that's something we saw way back at Ole Miss when we were down at Ole Miss. Everybody, all the Republicans were loyal to Donald Trump. And you say, would you like to see a primary challenger? And they were like, yeah, Mike Pence, yeah, maybe. Nikki Haley, yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm not so sure that people aren't starting to hear that in town hall meetings at home.
Well, still ahead, Susan mentioned the Roger Stone indictment. The longtime Trump ally pled not guilty yesterday to charges stemming from Robert Mueller's Russia probe. We'll be joined by House Intel Committee Chair Adam Schiff to talk about that and other developments in the Mueller investigation. Morning Joe is back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.